Every year, the world harvests and farms over 220 short tons of seafood, of which around 177 tons are used directly as food for humans, helping to meet global nutritional and commercial demands. Seafood is not only an essential protein source for billions of people, but it also provides livelihoods for tens of millions of workers. Therefore, fishing has become a crucial link in the development of the marine economy and the culinary culture of many countries. Today, let's explore 20 of the most impressive fishing moments from fishermen around the world. To start today's journey, we head to Indonesia to see how they catch yellowfin tuna using traditional methods. The bait commonly used to lure yellowfin tuna is anchovies, which are very easy to catch. When reaching an area with yellowfin tuna, fishermen throw the anchovies into the water in order to attract the tuna to gather. Once a tuna school has gathered to feed, the captain signals the fishermen to move to the bow of the boat. Each fisherman holds a pre-prepared fishing rod and takes position, casting their hooks into the water. Because the tuna density is very high, the hooks quickly catch the fish and the fishermen pull sharply to bring the tuna onto the deck. This method usually requires 15 to 30 fishermen, working continuously until the entire school is caught. Now we move on to one of the modern methods of catching yellowfin tuna using nets. This method is only suitable for large, high-powered vessels, meaning very high investment costs are required. With modern equipment, the ship can detect the location and size of the tuna school. Once the tuna location is identified, a small boat with a net head encircles the school. A helicopter above monitors the movement of the fish, helping fishermen to adjust their encircling strategy in real time. A small speedboat circles the school to push the tuna into the center, preventing the fish from spreading outside the net area. When the tuna are fully enclosed in the net, the main ship begins hauling it in to reduce the school's area. The net typically measures 3,280 to 6,560 feet in length and 328 to 820 feet in depth. After the tuna are enclosed in the net, a giant net bag is used to lift the fish from the net onto the deck. The net bag has a special design. With a single action, the bottom opens and all the fish fall into the hold. Each haul can yield 44,000 to 110,000 pounds of tuna, and some large schools can even reach up to 154,000 pounds. At this stage, the fish slide down conveyor belts into the storage area. Using conveyors replaces manual labour, reduces collisions that could damage the fish, and shortens handling time after harvest. Traditional cooling with ice involves layering fish with crushed ice to keep the temperature near 32 degrees Fahrenheit. This preserves the freshness for several days. Some modern vessels even use ultra-low freezing systems at negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit to negative 76 degrees Fahrenheit to keep the fish at the highest quality for export. At the end of the journey, yellowfin tuna are transported ashore. Some vessels use conveyors for unloading, while others rely on manual handling from the hold. Finally, the tuna are distributed to markets and supermarkets. Next, we'll move on to the sardine fishing journey. Sardines are mainly distributed along the coast of Portugal and France, while in Asia they are concentrated in the waters around Japan. Sardines have high nutritional value and are relatively inexpensive, making them an excellent choice. Unlike skipjack tuna fishing, sardine fishing requires two large vessels working together to pull in the nets. When the sardine school rises close to the surface, the fishermen stop hauling in the net. At this point, they can use a large net bag to lift the sardines onto the ship for preservation. Some fishermen are assigned to push any sardines that fall outside into the ship's hold. Each haul yields around 10 to 50 tons. Sardines are then stored in seawater and ice at temperatures between 32 and 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Once unloaded at the port, sardines are quickly transported to processing plants to ensure freshness. First, the fish are washed with water before moving to the cutting stage. Here, an automatic machine slices the sardines into sections while also removing the head and tail. Next, the sardines are washed once more before being placed into cans by workers. Finally, the cans are sterilised at 239 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit for 40 to 90 minutes. This kills all the microorganisms, ensures food safety and extends shelf life. Next, let's head to Alaska to see how fishermen catch salmon. In 2024, the state's commercial salmon harvest reached more than 100 million fish, bringing in around $304 million. Alaskan salmon is considered premium, known for its deep red colour and high omega-3 content. The boat moves to the location of the salmon school. Then a smaller boat pulls one end of the net to encircle the fish. Thanks to the power of the winch, the net gradually tightens. This net is then hauled up to the side of the boat, and the salmon inside tumble onto the deck. This method often injures the fish and can affect the quality. Some boats instead use specialised pumps to bring the salmon aboard. This helps to prevent bruising and preserves the quality for export. It's not just salmon meat that's sought after. Salmon roe is a valuable product. Once removed, the roe is sorted, then workers rub the egg sacs over a metal mesh to separate the individual eggs. The eggs are washed clean to remove debris. To remove excess water, workers place the eggs in a centrifuge. Finally, the salmon roe is canned and shipped to market. To add more thrill to the video, let's follow the shark fishing journey, one of the most dangerous creatures of the ocean. The bait is usually live fish or a bloody piece of fish to attract sharks more easily. They have an incredibly sharp sense of smell and are able to detect prey from miles away, which adds to their fearsome reputation. Once the bait is tossed into the water, it quickly draws the shark's attention. They lunge at the bait, and in that moment, the angler must use all of their strength to hold the rod. Sharks typically weigh between 330 and 1100 pounds, depending on the species and maturity. To ensure safety when bringing the shark on board, the angler will use a gun to finish it off.
Now you know he did.
Although sharks have a high value for both food and medicine, shark fishing is no longer a common practice worldwide. Overfishing has reduced shark populations across the globe, causing ecological imbalance, and it has been banned in many countries.
There we go. All right, tag him.
Next, we'll move on to another equally dangerous form of fishing, swordfish hunting. Swordfish are easily recognised by their long bill, which they use to slice through the water and for defence. With an average length of 8 to 10 feet and an average weight ranging from 200 to 440 pounds, as well as the ability to swim at speeds of 37 to 56 miles per hour, they are among the most difficult and dangerous creatures to catch in the open ocean. Swordfish prefer live bait because of its quick and strong movements. Once the bait is cast, the swordfish quickly detect and strike. From the moment the fish bites it to the time it's hauled onto the boat, it becomes an intense battle. This process often lasts for hours, as swordfish are incredibly strong and enduring. After many exhausting hours, the swordfish finally gives in, and at this point, the angler pulls it close to the boat. Next, a harpoon attached to a rope is thrust into the fish's body to prevent it from escaping. Then a gaff, a pole with a metal hook at the end, is used to both restrain and pull the swordfish on board. Landing a swordfish usually requires the effort of 3 to 4 people working together, or sometimes with the use of a winch to be able to haul it in. Swordfish are highly valued for their rich nutritional content. This makes their meat a sought-after commodity in the market. Although swordfish fishing is dangerous, it is undeniably an unforgettable experience. Have you ever seen a grouper weighing more than 600 pounds? In our next journey, we'll explore how fishermen catch this powerful species, often calling the strongest fish living near the shore. Thanks to the delicious taste and high nutritional value, grouper is popular in many Asian markets. Fishermen usually use live bait to attract groupers. Since these fish are natural predators with a strong hunting instinct and a tendency to ambush. Once it detects the bait, the grouper strikes immediately. When hooked, it fights fiercely, using its immense strength and stubbornness to dig in at the bottom, making it extremely difficult to hold the rod. This requires both skill and endurance from the angler. That's why grouper fishing not only brings significant economic value, but is also considered an exciting challenge in sport fishing. Here's the reward after several grueling hours. The giant grouper finally surrenders. Its strength and tenacity make the battle a true test, and that hard-earned victory makes the catch even more valuable. Farewell to the grouper. Now we move on to the legendary bluefin tuna. Famous for its massive size and lightning speed, beyond its power, it's also prized for its premium meat, especially sought after in high-end cuisine such as sashimi and sushi. First, let's look at purse seine fishing. Once the school of bluefin tuna is located, fishermen deploy several small boats and large nets to encircle them. This method usually requires around 25 to 40 crew members working together to haul in the net. Then, using sheer strength, the fishermen gradually tighten the perimeter and depth of the net until the massive tuna come into view. Some divers enter the enclosed area to secure the tuna, making it easier to bring them on board. Once caught, the fish are either frozen immediately or transported directly to shore to supply the fresh tuna market. Still focusing on bluefin tuna, let's move on to rod and line fishing. Unlike net fishing, this method takes more effort and time, but it guarantees the highest quality of meat. Once hooked, a giant bluefin tuna often thrashes violently, charging in every direction to break free. With raw muscle power and sheer stamina, these fish can stretch the fishing line for hours, sometimes even snapping the rod. This grueling battle makes bluefin tuna fishing one of the most intense challenges, which demands skill, endurance, and real experience to master. The tuna is eventually hauled aboard with gaff hooks, and for the largest ones, pulleys are often required for support. Fresh bluefin tuna typically sells for $9 to $13 per pound, meaning a fish weighing 440 pounds like this one can earn fishermen between $4,000 and $5,600 before expenses. This makes rod and line fishing an incredibly valuable catch. Next we come to the king of all crabs, the king crab. Its high market value doesn't just come from the premium quality of its meat, but also from the perilous journey required to catch it. Let's follow fishermen of Alaska, home to some of the world's most renowned king crab fisheries. Once the captain locates the fishing grounds, he gives the signal for the crew to drop the massive crab pots. Unlike other species, king crabs live along the sea floor, so pot traps are the most effective method. After the soak time ends, the crew relies on powerful hydraulic winches to haul the heavy pots back onto the deck. The crabs are then dumped out and sorted. Male king crabs with a shell width of at least 6.7 inches are kept, while females and anything undersized is returned to the sea. In 2024, Alaska's king crab harvest reached 9 million pounds, with an estimated value of $96 million. These remarkable numbers reflect not only the richness of natural resources, but also the effectiveness of a strict fishery management. Unlike the Alaskan fishermen, in Japan, king crabs are often caught using gill nets. After around 12 hours of soaking, the crew returns to haul the nets back up on board. Each crab must then be carefully untangled by hand, a process that takes considerable time and effort. Finally, the king crabs are transported back to shore, ready to be prepared for market. Another crab highly valued both economically and culinarily is the snow crab. Compared to the king crab, snow crab is more affordable, yet its meat is still top quality. This makes it highly sought after on the market. First, we'll look at the trapping methods of catching snow crabs. Much like the king crab, fishermen set out large pots on the sea floor. This method works well in areas with rocky or coral bottoms. After soaking for about 12 to 24 hours, the traps are hauled back up. Once the snow crabs are brought on board, they are dumped out and sorted. Market-sized snow crabs must reach 3.74 inches or more in shell width, while females and undersized crabs are released back into the sea. Doing this properly helps maintain the population and ensures annual harvest levels. Canada is the world's largest producer of snow crab, with a harvest of around 99,000 short tons and exports of more than 67,000 short tons. Next, we will go with Japanese fishermen to learn about their method of catching snow crab with nets. When arriving at the fishing grounds, fishermen release the nets. After being set for around 45 to 60 minutes, fishermen begin to haul them in. This usually takes around 20 to 35 minutes. Next, once the nets are gathered, a crane is used to lift the snow crabs back onto the deck. The crabs are then dumped out for sorting. In Japan, market-sized snow crabs must have a shell width larger than 5.7 inches. Females and undersized crabs are returned to the ocean. The disadvantage of net fishing is that it captures all organisms within the net's range, including trash. This can negatively impact the seabed ecosystem, and it also requires considerable time for sorting. In 2024, Japan's snow crab harvest reached around 23,000 short tons. Japan also exported around 1,000 short tons of frozen and canned crab to markets such as the US, Namibia, and Indonesia. To conclude the journey with snow crabs, we now turn to how fishermen catch lobsters. Similar to snow crabs, lobsters are also caught using traps. Fishermen lower the traps onto the seabed for 7 to 12 hours. This is enough time for the lobsters to crawl inside while still ensures their freshness when they're brought on board. Next, the fishermen haul up the traps with the help of a winch. Once removed, the lobsters are sorted according to market size, while undersized ones are returned to the sea. After sorting, lobsters are placed into holding tanks where they are kept alive. Upon reaching land, the water in the holding tanks is drained to facilitate transporting the lobsters ashore. For some small-scale fishing methods, fishermen do not use machinery. Instead, they rely entirely on manpower to haul up the lobster traps. After being pulled up, lobsters are taken out and placed into mesh bags. Once ashore, fishermen weigh the lobsters and sell them to local traders. In the US, lobsters are priced at around $28 a pound. So with a lobster catch of around 50 lobsters, fishermen can earn around $1,000 from a single trip. Next, we move to another lobster catching method, diving and using an iron hook. This method is typically used by fishermen with strong diving skills, since lobsters live at depths of around 23 to 33 feet and usually hide out in rocky crevices and coral reefs. Before diving, fishermen prepare goggles, fins, breathing gear, and most importantly, the iron hook. Once at the seabed, they search around rock holes, which are common hiding places for lobsters. When a lobster is spotted, the fisherman maneuvers the iron hook towards the body and then jerks suddenly so that the hook pierces into the lobster, preventing escape. After catching a lobster, the fisherman threads the metal string through its body to secure it. This continues until the oxygen supply runs low and the diver resurfaces. Each dive usually yields around 10 to 30 lobsters. Did you know that Indonesia is one of the countries with the largest squid catch in the world? The annual squid production reaches from around 105 to 220,000 short tons, thanks to the natural environmental conditions that allow squid to thrive here. When arriving at the fishing grounds, the captain gives the orders to release the fishing lines. Since squid usually feed at night and are very sensitive to light, fishermen often use high-powered lamps to attract them to gather around the boat. When the fishing lines reach out into an area where the squid are active, they are hauled back in. The artificial bait on the line is equipped with hooks, and while hunting, squid get caught and are pulled aboard. Because the hooks have no barbs, the squid are often flung out onto the deck by their own momentum. On each trip like this, fishermen can catch around 3,000 to 6,000 pounds of squid, depending on the fishing ground and scale of operations. With squid prices ranging from $1.18 to $2.13 per pound, each trip can bring in around $3,900 to $14,000. After being caught, squid are sorted and placed into trays before being stored. They are usually covered with crushed ice and kept at around 32 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Some boats have freezer holes where squid are frozen at -0.04 to -13 degrees Fahrenheit, or even way down to -22 degrees Fahrenheit to maintain quality on longer trips. To wrap up today's journey, let's take a look at how fishermen harvest millions of short tons of scallops. They are mainly distributed in the US, Canada, France, and Asian countries such as Japan and South Korea. Since scallops live on the seabed, the harvesting method is usually bottom trawling. The nets are made of an iron frame and mesh bags. In some places, the mesh bags are replaced with chains to ensure durability. The trawling process lasts around 30 to 1.5 hours. This helps secure both the yield and quality of scallops. To remove excess mud, the operator lowers the nets back into the sea a few times. Afterwards, the nets are hauled onto the deck. The scallops are then emptied out so that the fishermen can sort them, discarding any dead ones. Once sorted, the scallops are sent below deck for processing and preservation. Here, the adductor muscle, the firm, sweet-tasting white meat with high economic value, is separated from the shell. After separation, the adductor muscles are washed to remove impurities. Next, fishermen often pack them into bags like this. These bags are then stored under controlled conditions to maintain quality. Finally, the adductor muscles are transported ashore to supply processing plants. Let's move on to another shellfish with very high nutritional value: oysters. Unlike scallops, oysters can be farmed on a large scale in addition to being harvested from the wild. This makes oysters less expensive and also one of the most popular seafoods on the market, with consistently high demand. Now let's take a look at how fishermen farm and harvest oysters. First, oyster larvae are set into substrate so they can grow. Then, the young oysters are raised in seawater until they reach maturity. Once harvested, the oysters are washed with high-pressure hoses in order to remove mud and debris. Next, they are placed into large mesh bags and transported to processing facilities. At the plant, the mesh bags are lifted onto conveyor belts. Workers open the bags, letting the oysters fall onto the line. Using knives, they shuck the shells to extract the meat inside. With around 30 workers, a facility like this can process around 5 to 7 short tons of oysters each day. After shucking, the oyster meat is rinsed to remove impurities. To ensure quality, the oysters go through a grading step. Finally, they are packaged and prepared for market distribution. Next, let's take a look at anchovy fishing, one of the species that forms the largest schools in the ocean. South America is home to the world's biggest anchovy harvest, concentrated off the coasts of Peru and Chile. Using modern equipment, captains can detect the location and scale of the anchovy schools. At this point, a smaller boat carries one end of the net and encircles the fish. Setting the net usually takes around 30 minutes depending on its length. One end of the net is then hauled in by winch, while the perimeter is gradually narrowed. Retrieving the net typically takes 1 to 1.5 hours due to the depth and massive weight of the school. When the net is tightened, fishermen use specialized pumps to transfer the anchovies from the net onto the vessel. This method reduces both handling time and preservation challenges. In some places, scoop nets are used instead, but that approach is only suited to small or medium-scale operations. Once on board, anchovies are preserved in tanks with seawater and ice. For smaller boats with limited storage, fishermen must pile ice directly onto the fish to maintain freshness until reaching shore. To process anchovies into canned products, first the fish are washed. Next, their heads are removed and the bodies are typically packed into cans laid with salt for curing. The cans are typically cured for 6 to 12 months. After this, the fish are rinsed to reduce salinity, then spun in centrifuges to remove excess water. Finally, olive oil is poured in, and the cans are sealed for distribution. To wrap up today's journey, let's join Alaskan fishermen to see how they harvest halibut. This flatfish is prized in the US for its white flesh, low fat content, high protein, and rich supply of omega-3s, vitamin D, and vitamin B12. Halibut are caught using bottom trawls since they live along the ocean floor. Once the net is hauled in, the fish are emptied onto the deck. Then they are measured and sorted by size before being transferred into holding tanks for preservation and later on processing. And that concludes today's voyage, from setting out to sea to bringing home the catch. Which moment did you enjoy the most? Share your thoughts in the comment section below so everyone can join in on the conversation. Don't forget to follow along for more exciting journeys ahead.